Hey everyone! Today I'm going to walk through exactly how someone with a study score of 50 approaches the Section C component of the final exam. I'll show you everything I'd do in reading time and writing time. We're going through the 2022 VCAA paper, so if you haven't tried this one yet, make sure you give it a go to avoid spoilers. In reading time, I'm only going to give myself a maximum of 10 minutes, not 15, as I'd like to spend the other 5 quickly planning out my ideas for text responses if I were in the real exam. In writing time, you'll notice I take a lot of pauses. This is because as I write, I'm carefully reading over the sentences I've just written beforehand to make sure that what I add next makes sense. This is how I keep my piece coherent without having extensive time to go back and edit. You'll also notice I give myself a strict time limit of 15 minutes per body paragraph to make sure my essay is balanced. Let's jump right into it. This is the paper. I haven't looked at this one before, so it's completely fresh, completely unseen. And I think we'll go through it together. So we have to scroll down all the way to section C. And I'll spend the next 10 minutes looking through this and working out how I'd respond to it. Alright, analysis of how language is used. This is all fine, standard, same as Sax and everything. Right? An analysis of how language is used to persuade, aka same thing again. Background information. What I'm looking for here is all the stuff I can put in my introduction. Ideally, by the time I get to the end of reading time, I want to sort of have my introduction already planned out in my head, so I don't have to spend too much time thinking about it or working out exactly how I'm going to word it. HAPSI Happenings is a podcast hosted by lifelong HAPSI resident Janelle Tanley. She discusses local events and issues and promotes conservation of the town's local environment. Okay, pretty classic audience is local town. That's pretty standard for a VCAA paper, so no surprises there. In the most recent episode of her podcast, she discusses a proposed development plan for the HAPSI wetlands by the Nature and Adventure Group. Alright, so we've got a transcript of a podcast, we've got images by Tanley, and what we can say so far is that our context is there's been a proposal for a development plan that's led Tanley to have some strong opinions about it. Our author, Janelle Tanley, our audience, the HAPSI residents, title, HAPSI Happenings, tone, we'll have to see when we get to that. Text type, looks like a podcast or radio transcript. Alright, let's get into the actual piece. HAPSI Happenings, transcript of podcast, episode 32. Alright, we've got an image here. Piece is reasonably long, so there'll be plenty to go through. And we've got a second image here as well. So we're going to have to kind of balance this. Probably this one will go in our first paragraph, and we'll pop this in the second or third, depending on how it works. Alright, hello and welcome to HAPSI Happenings. I'm your host, Janelle. I'm sure all of you listening have heard about the recent development plan that's been proposed. Alright, this strikes me as persuasive, this section here, so I'm just going to note that kind of mentally. Alright, context for what's going on. More context. Alright, so this is kind of the background of the issue. So let's consider our wetlands. Narrow and unpaved characterization, probably come back to that. Flora is taken care of, also strikes me as persuasive. Softly tranquil surroundings, fauna living in peace. Alright, so we're starting to set up an image of these wetlands being like a quiet, important to protect area. Okay, threat of destruction, very persuasive, we'll come back to that. So here she's starting to talk about why the proposal is bad. In my lifetime, I've often seen people bring proposals for developments to council meetings. Alright, quotes around revitalization. She's being a bit sarcastic, it looks like. Okay, destruction of over 40 different species, also persuasive. Alright, so she's characterizing these humans and businesses as putting themselves before the environment, the wetlands. Okay, so we've got our introductory statement, we've got setting up the wetlands as a beautiful place, talking about how they're going to be in trouble. As locals, we are guardians of this area. Okay, so probably she's going to set up some degree of like guilt or encouraging people to feel as if they have a responsibility to act. Many of us have worked tirelessly to protect these native plants from all kinds of danger. We know from experience. Okay, so she's talking about past things. Digging machinery, desecrate, makes it all sound very harmful. Fragile species shows how at risk they are. Damaged beyond repair, they have to act before it's too late because it'll be permanent. Alright, one careless tourist, stomping, delicate fern. So everything's really characterized as the humans being really harsh and attacking, and the wetlands being really delicate and in need of protection. Alright, rhetorical question. That's a clear one. Okay, and now she's talking about how this is going to continue on. So this is only the beginning of the problem. So this is to amplify how serious the whole development is, because it won't end with that. Okay, charging for parking, so it won't even benefit people, they'll have to pay. Alright, so she's kind of using a bit of a slippery slope here. If this happens, then we're going to have a chain that follows. And then she's jumping to the conclusion and an exclamation at the end, so she's showing that this is really ridiculous. Alright, she's providing an alternative, so we don't have to get rid of the wetlands. There are other things we can do. Image, we're going to need to analyze this as well. It's got a bird eating some plastic. Alright, so it seems like there's some sarcasm here. She's throwing some question marks over what the developers are claiming. Alright, so again, ridicule. She's showing that their statements are really outlandish and shouldn't be believed. Alright, tactical concession. I realize these people feel like they're offering an excellent opportunity. However, that's just not the case. Preemptive rebuttal. They claim this, so she's throwing doubt on it. She's saying it won't really happen. And then rhetorical question. Will it have this effect? Probably not. Again, rhetorical question, another rhetorical question, another one again. So this whole thing is a series of questions. Probably what she's doing is just listing all these questions out to really amplify her point that all these things are not going to come to pass. We must consider what's best for our wonderful wetlands. Okay, call to action. I would love to hear from you. How do you feel about this? Leave your comments. Don't forget to follow. Alright, I've got a general sense now of the kinds of arguments this person's making. I also know what the images are. Probably my next stage from here would be to work out what the main arguments are, so I've only got 2 more minutes of my reading time. I would say the introduction is probably this section where she sets up her background, what the wetlands are like, and what the proposal is. And then here she's talking about how locals should have some responsibility for it, and how the plan is going to be just the beginning of all these other bad stuff. And maybe I'd put the image in this one, because the last one is about questioning what the developers would do and kind of closing off. So this would probably go in either, but I might pop it in this one because here she's talking about the problems for the nature. So that's probably where I'd put it. Alright, so at this stage, I know what's going to go in my introduction except for maybe tone. Tone, I need to pick 2 adjectives for that. I'd say maybe concerned and exhortative, because she seems to be really urging her listeners to do something about it. So our introduction's done, we know what we're going to put in that. Image is going to go in the first paragraph, I'm going to talk up to here. Next image will go in this paragraph, and I'll talk about how she's characterizing the responsibility of the locals. And lastly, I'm going to talk about this. Alright, I have 30 more seconds of reading time. So probably I would just note a couple of the persuasive techniques in my head so that I can start annotating them as soon as possible. I think I'll annotate in pink. Alright, so now my writing time is starting. So I'm just going to quickly highlight some things I think are persuasive. Alright, we've got some smiling faces. We seem to have this real background of nature here. We've got people on bikes, families. Seems like quite, these people are roller skating. So there seems to be this sense that this is a really outdoorsy place. There's a lot of nature, it's family friendly, and everyone can be happy if they kind of interact with nature in a really clean way. I might just quickly annotate some techniques I want to write about. Here I'm just underlining anything that comes across as persuasive to me, or where I'd put emphasis on that in my mind. A lot of it's stuff we talked about in reading time. This kind of gives a sense that this has happened before. We don't want it to happen again. Yeah, in my lifetime. Disguised, so she's setting up some sense of deception. Quote, sarcasm again. Also, I want to separate out my arguments. So I'm just going to draw a line through here. And a line through here. Yeah, that'll probably do. I think I've got enough techniques for this section, probably. Maybe and so on. Anytime you see punctuation things like this that kind of signal emphasis, that's a good thing to note. Alright, as locals, so she's putting herself and the locals in the same category. Guardians, attributing a sense of responsibility. Native. Rhetorical question. Here she's starting to build that sense of ridicule, I think. She's showing that all this work in the past will go to waste. And this is that ridicule we talked about in reading time. Alright, and then this image. What's persuasive in this? We've got a bird, so natural environment. we've got all this rubbish here showing how the environment's been polluted, and we've got the bird attempting to eat the rubbish. So maybe that makes us feel a bit sorry for the bird. What else can we pick? It's in black and white, so maybe we can say that this is sort of the bland reality that we're going to have to face if we don't save the wetlands. And maybe we can talk about how these flowers here look like they've been a bit trampled on. I think that's what they are. So we've definitely got plenty to talk about in this image. All right, in 30 seconds, I'm just going to quickly annotate this last section. This is kind of characterizing the tourists and the locals into an us and them thing. So, like, the people who come here aren't going to share our values, they're outsiders. Painting the opposition as negative. Call to action in this last section. Alright, and then this is just tell people what to do. Okay, that's our first 5 minutes of writing time. So let's start putting this piece actually together. So my introduction I've kind of already planned in my head in reading time. I'm just going to get it out as quickly as possible now. The issue of a new development in the Hapsey wetlands. Is that what they're called? Yes. Has been raised by Janelle. What's that author again? Tanny? Janelle Tanley. Alright, I've got my context, catalyst, author, audience. I need to put my audience in. Text type, title, tone. Great, okay, that's everything I need in my intro. That only took me 2 minutes. Now I need to get into body paragraph 1, so I'm going to spend 15 minutes on this. What is argument 1? I've spent about the first 8 minutes or so just quickly annotating. Probably you'd spend a bit less, maybe 5. And now we're going to write our body. So what does Tanley argue first? She establishes the local area and the problem that it is facing. begins her podcast by reminding her audience. You know what? Maybe I'll set these two kind of next to each other. That might be easier. Then I can see what I'm doing, which is actually probably closer to what you'd want to do in the exam anyway. Okay, Townley begins her podcast by establishing Alright, I just want some kind of characterization of the overall argument in this section. Okay, she's talked about how she's a host. And now she talks about the development plan. Alright, what's the effect of this? She's characterizing it as a contentious issue, so she's not saying she's just one person who cares about it. She's saying lots of people care about it. Maybe say left here. So she's representing herself as a relevant member of the community, not just some outsider. Okay, how am I doing for time? Oh, I have heaps of time. That's good. Alright, so that's the first thing, and then she kind of transitions argument, so it's good if we can pick that up. She moves immediately to discuss the present beauty of the wetlands. Alright, and this establishes how it's kind of like a natural wonderland. What have I said? as having paths which are narrow and unpaved, showing maybe like untouched by human interference. Okay, I'm just going through basically and looking at where I've annotated and squeezing as much in as possible. Alright, Tanley highlights how this ensures the native flora is taken care of. I'm used showing a lot, so I'm going to change that. Alright, in terms of words, how am I doing? 173. Okay, so I'm about halfway through. That's good. And I've got sort of 8 minutes left of my time, so I'm halfway through my time as well, which is good. Okay, now we're still talking about how good the wetlands are, so we've still got to analyze this stuff here. I'm just reading what I've written previously to make sure I can build on it. Alright, I don't think I'm going to fit this in, so whatever, that's fine. Oh, I also need to talk about the image. Probably I should put a little asterisk up here and write it, squeeze it down at the bottom of my exam paper. But in this case, I think I'll pop it at the end of the paragraph. Or maybe I'll pop it in the middle here before going on to the problems. All this, these establishing remarks are augmented by the image off the top of the transcript, depicting happy locals enjoying the surrounding nature. Alright, now we're going to just pick 4 or 5 little elements for the image and analyze them separately. bit repetitive, but whatever. Consists of trees and bushes, showing how Pepsi close connection with nature. Wow. Okay, sometimes you can also talk about like the overall style of the image, so I might do that too, while the childlike style of the visual reinforces the Alright, this paragraph is getting pretty long, so probably I'd want to be ending it soon. 3:12. Yeah, that's heaps. I haven't really fitted in this stuff here, so maybe that should go in the middle and the image should go in the last section. We'll go with that. I will put just a teeny bit in there though. Let's just check I can fit it, because I still have 3 minutes. Probably went into a bit too much detail here, but that's okay. However, this opening is juxtaposed with the development characterized as a threat of destruction. This I probably won't have time to deal with. Deceptive and manipulative. What else have I said? Single word. What else would we want to say? Maybe I will fit it in. Oops, I've gone a minute over. Alright, let's wrap this one up. Ultimately, the opening section of Tanley's podcast aims to establish the important connection between residents, the importance of the wetlands and the danger posed to them by the development. Alright, this is a very long paragraph. I don't know if you'd be able to write this in an exam, but that's okay. Let's go into paragraph 2. That one will probably be a little bit briefer, and if not with the image, then the last one definitely will be. Okay, I only have 13 minutes to write this body, so I've got to jump right into it. Okay, so we're going to recap the argument. Having said whatever the previous argument was, Tanley goes on to remind her audience that they have a responsibility to protect it. Okay, she presents herself as part of the group with her starting phrase as locals, building ethos. By describing the locals as guardians of this area, she imposes a sense of responsibility on her audience. Suggesting that if they do not act, no one will. What else does she say? Alright, so they've worked tirelessly. So she's kind of suggesting all that work will be wasted. I might want to squeeze in this inclusive language too. She furthers the sense of loss they're facing by adding that the locals have worked tirelessly, suggesting that... Oh no, we've already used that. How much effort will have been wasted if the proposal goes through? I'll pop in the inclusive language as well. Although that's a very brief analysis. A continual reference of the effect to the fact that the plants are native may be particularly important for those who take great pride in maybe we'll just say rare flora and fauna. Okay, segmenting the audience, that's good. A continual reference to the fact that plants are native. This I probably won't deal with. This I probably won't deal with. She goes on to characterize. Oh no, maybe. Tanley proceeds to characterize the wetlands as full of fragile species. Alright, so what I'm doing is showing this dichotomy she sets up between the humans and the nature. Alright, she feathers a sense of loss by saying they work tirely. Her continual reference is particularly important. She proceeds to characterize the wetlands as a Alright, and what's the effect of this? Characterizes desecrate the beautiful place beyond repair. Okay, I have like 5 minutes to finish this paragraph, so I will quickly speed up. I might just leave that there. Probably nothing else here needs to be dealt with, maybe stomping. So she in this way she juxtaposes the beauty and fragility of the wetlands with the harshness of the treatment would be provided by these outsider humans who do not understand the wetlands as the locals do. Alright, this contrast is built on by Tanley's slippery slope argument This will, I can actually quote this. This will only be the start. This will only be the start. Let me just quickly read what I've written. Alright. Well, that's helpful. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And then I just need to say that she builds that into a degree of ridicule. Spend the rest of their lives fighting off fallen ones. Tenley builds this. Yeah, no, we can save that. Hapsy wetlands, shopping centres. I'll have to put square brackets around that because I've changed it. And an amusement park. Could deal with the exclamation mark, but it's probably a bit too much. So I just won't. Might make this a bit bigger. Setting potential. You know what, we can just leave that there. I think we've already said that it's ridicule, so that's plenty. Alright, we will in fact deal with the image right at the end because we just don't have space for it in this paragraph. How many words are we up to? Yeah, 287. We're kind of getting near the end. And an effort to an alternative, however, happily suggests people look for equally scenic places showing that they won't have to compromise on quality. However, if they go elsewhere, they will have the benefit of being able to protect the delicately balanced ecology of the wetlands. However, if they go elsewhere, they will have the benefit of being able to protect the delicately balanced ecology of the wetlands. Okay, and this is referencing that earlier point about the wetlands being really in need of protecting, reinforcing her earlier point about the wetlands needing protection. Okay, I think that's all for this paragraph. So how did I end the last one? Ultimately. So this one would be overall the middle section of Tanley's podcast is designed to position listeners to feel as if they have a duty to protect the wetlands before it is too late, and be reminded that there are other options, the proposed benefits of the park, other options for proposed benefit of the development without the consequences. All right, I think that's everything. Let's just quickly check. Great, okay. Finally, Tanley suggests that picks up her earlier created mistrust towards the developers and all right, let's finally deal with this image. Brief description of the image. What will we maybe say? Creates a smooth transition from her previous point to her new one. All right, and then let's describe some of the elements of this image. The bird appears small and with thin legs, showing its fragility. Meanwhile, the water is full of rubbish such as a waste cup, and the flowers on the right hand side appear tattered, suggesting that the river has been polluted. The bird holding the plastic bag in its mouth creates a sadness in the audience, since the bird doesn't know better, I guess, and is suffering due to the laziness of people, we can say. Alright, finally Tanler picks up her earlier created mistrust. The bird appears small with thin legs. Overall, the image suggests that the development will be an ecological disaster, and the developers will not be held to their word. Alright. She puts quotation marks around their claim about the excellent record in order to instill doubt in her audience as to their ability to maintain it. Alright, I have like 14 minutes left to write this whole thing. So that's not too bad. I think 10 minutes on this paragraph and 5 minutes on the conclusion should be pretty good. Let's just quickly reread what I've written and check it makes sense. She puts quotation marks around the claim about the excellent record in order to instill doubt in her audiences to their ability to maintain it. She furthers this with the exclamation, believe that if you like. In order to create a strong sense of dubiousness towards the developers and their promises. Okay. Despite this diatribe or this attack, can I say diatribial? Nope. Despite this diatribe against the developers, Townley employs the preemptive rebuttal that these people feel they are offering an excellent opportunity, showing that despite her mistrust, she is still able to understand them as people, just misguided in not understanding the local region as she and her neighbors do. Alright, she furthers this sense of the developers and tourists being outsiders in her series of rhetorical questions where she asks whether they would share the values of the locals. Okay, she furthers a sense of the developers and tourists being outsiders in her series of rhetorical questions where she asks whether they would share the values of the locals. Okay, and she also picks up this point about the locals being guardians. Townley also takes the opportunity to reinforce pride and responsibility by characterizing them as those protecting the native inhabitants. Okay, there's so much we can talk about this piece. We definitely can't fit all of it in, which is rather unfortunate. 285, so we're getting to the end of this paragraph as well, so I might just pop in a few more bits here and then we'll be done. I also have only 9 minutes left to write, so we're doing well for time. She furthers the sense of the developers and tourists being outsiders, where she asks whether it shares values to locals. No, we've already talked about the responsibility, so that's fine, we'll leave it there. This series of rhetorical questions takes up most of her paragraph. It is designed to fill an overwhelming list and attempt to show the magnitude of the number of problems and questions this development raises. Okay, I think that's plenty. Tenley continues her point about the developers being misguided, only interested in profit, by finally revealing that she believes their proposal is a selfish attempt to make a commercial venture look good. Painting them as self-centered and profit-driven. Let me just check that doesn't repeat too much of the first half of the sentence. She continues her point about the developers being misguided and only offering profit. She believes. Maybe I can say money-driven. That might be easier. This sets up the key part of her final rhetorical question about whether or not the locals can trust such outsiders with their precious, and we're quoting from above, special place. Okay, and then we can close it out, I think, with our final sentence. Tanley closes with a call to action, asking her audience to consider what is best for our wonderful wetlands. The inclusive language. The inclusive language adding to or cementing her place as one of her audience. One of her audience. And reminding them that she would love to hear from them. A polite and enthusiastic way of reminding them that she is still on their side and will fight for what they believe in. and we'll fight for what they believe in. Okay, I think that's everything we really need, so I'll close that out. Love to hear from them. Planned an enthusiastic way of, I don't want to say reminding twice. Reminding them that she's still on their side and will fight for what they believe in. Ultimately, Tanley aims to leave her audience with the sense that they cannot trust these outside developers and must work together to protect their wetlands before they are lost forever. Okay, that'll do. We have like 2.5 minutes to go, so I'll just put in a really quick conclusion. Townley's podcast contends overall that the wetlands development proposal is dangerous to the locals' special place, that it must not go ahead, or more specifically that the locals should counteract it while they still can. But I've written what I've written now, so we'll leave that. She relies mostly on pathos to remind the audience of the importance of the wetlands to them, as well as their personal role in protecting it as guardians. Alright, and then I'm just gonna finish with something very brief. Topic is likely one that will continue to be heavily debated. Okay, we can probably leave that there. Great, we have exactly 1 minute to go until writing time is done. So if we have a look, our whole piece is, woo, this is quite long. You probably wouldn't be able to write all this in exam if you're going by hand, but that's okay because there was plenty of stuff I left out in here as I was writing because I just couldn't fit it in and I really had to cram as much as possible. But this is how I would respond to the 2022 VCAA response under timed conditions. So you got to see everything that I would do in my reading time, exactly how I'd go through the instructions, annotate the images, separate the arguments, highlight all the things I want to talk about, and you also got a good sense of how I would actually write this. So super brief introduction, really full body paragraphs, and then super brief conclusion. So these should only take 2 minutes each. Okay, so writing time's just ended, it's 45. And how I really keep to a very strict 15-minute limit per body paragraph. It's really the only way to make sure you're able to write a full piece to time. Great. Thanks so much for listening to this piece, everyone. It means a lot to me. Hopefully this gives you a good sense of the overall arguments in the piece, the contention, the sub-arguments and how they change between paragraphs, and also how you can do visual analysis and word-level analysis of particular techniques. Hopefully you found this helpful. Definitely use it in your revision. Write a response to the 2022 piece if you haven't already. And be sure to go through this one as well. Check out the way it's worded, if there's any particular sentence structures you like, and make sure to incorporate them into your own writing as well, so that you can become a better author yourself. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you would like more content like this, please hit subscribe. And if you found this valuable, please hit that like button or send to someone else you think could use this. Your shares help us grow our audience so we can help more students for free. Happy studying!